Welcome to another episode of Going Beyond the Title, from individual contributor to leader, where we interview leaders on the topic of making the transition as an individual contributor into a leadership role and some of the challenges they face, as well as some of the rewards. I'm your host, Michael Scarponi, and today's guest is Daniel McCaul. Welcome, Daniel.
Hi, Michael. Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Nice to have you here. Daniel is the Chief Operating Officer of Vilpe USA. He's been charged with growing the company from a team of 3 up to what's the projected growth rate at this point?
So target plan is that we'd be at around 10 to 12 people by the end of 2026, and then growing that maybe up to 25, 30 by the end of 2027. Beyond that, then we will be starting to pursue our domestic manufacturing capabilities, manufacturing plant, and then growing that organically as well.
Yeah. So you said there's 150 people worldwide in this company. I'm just curious, are they planning on taking the headquarters where it's currently located over to the Cleveland area, or?
No, there wouldn't be any intention of moving the headquarters per se. It's a 50-year-old family Finnish business. I think the headquarters are firmly going to remain where they are, but we will have, of course, some people transitioning back and forth between the operations. So, for example, our CEO for the US, he's in the middle of the visa process now to relocate to the US to lead the organization.
Okay, great.
So we will have that intra-company movement, obviously.
Yeah. Charged with a lot of growth in a very short period of time. Going to be challenging, yet also rewarding to see you grow into your leadership, for sure. One other note, Daniel told me that you've been in this country since 2022, that you're a native of Ireland. How do you like living in the States?
So I think certainly the biggest change getting from the east coast of Ireland to Ohio is definitely the topography. Lots of mountains, lots of rivers, lakes. It's different. And here in Cleveland, you stand on the step ladder, I can see Cincinnati.
Yeah, I was going to say. And before we get into the leadership question, when we were talking before the recording, you indicated that corned beef and cabbage is an Irish dish.
Yeah, I can confirm that this is a myth. Corned beef and cabbage is not a dish in Ireland. No matter what anybody tells you on St. Patrick's Day, that's not on our menu.
Yes, and that's, and we swear by that here. Oh, yeah, you have to have it on St. Patty's Day. Well, welcome. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. Let's just get into it. How did you get into this work?
So it's a pretty interesting journey. I started out with a company called F.G. Wilson, which was owned by Caterpillar. So it was Caterpillar Northern Ireland stroke F.G. Wilson. I started out there as an industrial placement student or an intern. So during my college degree, part of that was that it was a 4-year degree. 1 year of that had to be spent in industry. And I was fortunate enough to get a position in Caterpillar. Started out there in very, very loosely in the design engineering team. I moved rapidly then into the quality and customer support end and loved it from there. That really opened my eyes up to, other areas of the business outside of what we were learning in college, which was really 3D CAD, the principles of engineering. But moving into that customer quality support function, you really get to see how different areas of the business all work together. So that was my entry into the professional world. I was fortunate enough to be offered a permanent role there during that industrial placement. So actually finished my final year in college. I want to say part-time, but it was probably 80 hours a week at that point. So it was going from, turning up to work at 5:45 in the morning at Caterpillar, being there till lunchtime, going to the university then for the afternoon, and probably checking out of the parking lot at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting year. Then after graduating college, there was some restructuring going on within Caterpillar. So I moved to another company just outside of Belfast. At the time, it was called Schrader Electronics, then changed into Sensata Technologies. Continued down the quality path at that point. So I started out in Schrader as a supplier quality engineer. And that is where I really got the international experience started to build. So in that role, global automotive tier one supplier, obviously the supply chain was quite complex. So it was a lot of travel around Europe. We had travel in Asia, US. So that really got me to see the variation across the world in how the companies operate, how the culture differences take place there. So that was a really, really key foundation pillar for me. Um, Still at that point, individual contributor, no leadership positions in that role. Then from Sensata, moved to a company called Cargotec Ireland, or Moffat, or Hiab. It goes by a few different names. And they produce the truck-mounted forklift. So you'll see those on certain big box retailers all over the US on the back of the truck. My tenure within that company, again, started out individual contributor, very much in the supplier development side of the organization. Then moved into procurement. So that was kind of a change in direction. There was some opportunities came up within the business. I moved into a sourcing role. And then from the sourcing role, moved into sourcing projects manager, and then ultimately the head of sourcing for the business in Ireland. That is when I moved into the leadership position. So managing a team of buyers and supplier development people. That role turned into a leadership team position for the facility, where I moved into sourcing director. Beyond that, then continued to build that leadership experience, more and more direct reports, more and more different functions. And then just before COVID hit in 2020, I moved into another role of global category director for powertrain electronics for the same organization. That then really broadened into having teams in multiple geographies. So I had teams reporting to me in the US. I had members of my team in Spain, Italy, very broad locations. So that brought its own unique set of challenges. But I think the earlier career where I'd spent that time traveling, being in organizations across Europe, across the US, kind of gave me a head start in managing an international team. So that cultural differences wasn't so prominent then at that point. I was able to navigate the different environments. So spent the best part of a decade, just under 10 years with Hiab Cargotec. Then at the end of 2025, moved to this position as Chief Operating Officer for Vilpa USA. So that was a very, very interesting opportunity that came up to really develop and grow and build an organization from the ground up in the US. So that is what really attracted me to that role. And right now we're in the middle of building out that sales and service function. We're going to be expanding into the support functions, technical functions. So really, I'm getting to use a lot of the skill sets that I've built up over the past 15 years and translate that into a really solid hiring plan for this organization. Because knowing what good looks like, being able to figure out how to structure those teams, and I think most importantly is how to leverage the strength of the individual contributors within those teams, how they complement each other, how you can get them to gel, even with different personalities, different tactics, different even sales personalities, being able to kind of spot the gaps there that the individuals have and then partner them up, and being able to align different skill sets is critical.
Yeah. When you made that jump from an individual contributor into a leadership role and continued your leadership journey, what were some of the beliefs that you had to let go of?
So some of the beliefs I had to let go of, number one was that, yeah, I can do this, no problem. So that, I don't know whether that's a character fault or just the Irish mentality of, do you know what? Let's give this a go. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
That was something very quickly that had to get parked. One of the biggest things that I got hit with during that transition was, and I remember a direct quote from someone else on the leadership team of the business that went, "You don't have enough gray hairs to be in this role." That was something I encountered quite a lot in those early stages of the leadership positions. At the time, I was late 20s. I think I was 27, 28 whenever I moved into that leadership role. And there was a lot of, yeah, you're very good at the sourcing, you're very good at the supplier development, but you don't have enough gray hairs for this position.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that almost became again another character flaw where I was like, no, I'm going to prove you wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Um, uh, when you look back over your leadership career, what's one thing that you're especially proud of?
I think the one thing I'm really proud of is that I've never had anybody resign for the wrong reasons from any of my organizations. People have obviously taken new challenges and they moved on to different roles and things like that. But I've never had an issue turn personal where someone is resigning because of how I feel my leadership has been. That's something I'm very proud of. And even I keep in regular contact with people that have been working for me in the past. I mean, I've got some good personal friends, people that used to work for me.
Yeah.
So that is something I'm very proud of. I think certainly they could probably attest to this as well, that I try to build that camaraderie with the team. I don't like to be that top-down authoritative structure. It
Yep.
very much is, right? We're all in this together. Yes, the buck stops with me, but I'm here in the trenches with you.
Yeah, and thinking about that, what do you think is the main reason why people stay with you, other than leaving for, the reasons like they want to increase their pay or jobs or whatever? Why do you think people stayed with you? What were you giving?
Money is certainly an important aspect for people, but what I've found over the years as well is that it's not the be all and end all of the conversation. If somebody doesn't feel supported, if somebody doesn't feel like there is someone there that they can go to with a challenge, I think that's almost more important than pay scale in some of these positions for people. And I've tried to be that for those individuals that reported into me, regardless of how long the tenure they've had with the company, if they're in a later stage of the career, doesn't matter to me. I still
Yeah.
want to be that person that they can come to, they can trust that something is going to get done about the problem they have. And maintaining that credibility is key because you lose it, it's gone forever.
Yeah.
You get one shot with that.
That's right. There's a great article in Harvard Business Review, comes up periodically by a researcher named Herzberg. And what he found was that people don't stay with jobs because of the money. Money's important,
Mm-hmm.
but exactly what you said, all those characteristics, like feeling that you're part of a team, that you make a contribution, that you're appreciated, all are things that people stay. And it sounds like you provided that for folks.
Yeah, and I mean, I learned that from the leaders I had. That was definitely something that was imparted on me. So I've been very fortunate to have great leaders throughout my career.
Yeah.
It started off very early, even within the Caterpillar placement year from college. The people that I was surrounded by at a leadership level were phenomenal, completely supportive, never dismissive. Nothing was unimportant enough that it didn't deserve a conversation. And I've kind of learned that and locked that in over the years.
Yeah.
And also, it's never just been about, the work, the business, everything. There's always been that personal connection that I've experienced from the leaders I've reported into. And I really wanted to emulate that in my style.
Yeah. The opposite point. Mistake that you've learned the most from.
Ooh, this is a good one. There's a couple. There's definitely a couple. I think very early in the leadership experience, one of the issues that I ran into was, again, tied back into that not enough gray hair scenario. That because I was in the role, I thought people would naturally just go along with the direction, the strategy, that they would buy into it. But there was a couple of instances there where people with longer tenures in the business had been there longer, knew more about the way that things operated, didn't necessarily see the strategy and the vision the way I did. And it became almost like roadblock scenarios where no matter what I would say, it was the complete opposite of what they seen the vision and the direction should be. I think the biggest mistake I made there was almost trying to over explain my thinking of how that strategy should be, really oversell it to people and try and almost coerce buy into it. That I see was probably a mistake now in reflection. There has to be a line drawn there where you still have that accountability and responsibility to lead. You can't bend for everyone. You can't give in to everyone and what they want. There is always going to be someone disappointed through change. That was a difficult lesson to learn because obviously first experience in a leadership position, wanted to make sure everybody was happy, wanted to make sure everybody was secure and felt comfortable in their roles. But when you have to change things strategically, there is always going to be that change management aspect. And
Yes.
the biggest mistake I think personally that I made was I didn't appreciate how much that change management needed to be done correctly.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Big. That whole transition piece becomes so critical, right? And you're right, going through the change process can really stumble you up depending on who the people are and what the change is, for sure. What are some of the best professional investments you've made in the past 2 years?
So professional investment wise, probably actually just a lot of reading, a lot of podcasts, a lot of trying to take that information in, not necessarily sitting down with a book every night and going through the leadership textbooks. I think there is a place for that, but I don't think it's particularly my style of learning.
Yes.
I really like these long format conversations, similar to what we're doing right now. I tend to listen to a lot of those. There is a podcast by a partner of ours in Cincinnati, and he will bring in, very senior people from organizations and talk about their leadership journey. That is the kind of stuff that I invest my time into listening, is relatable experiences that other people in similar positions have had. I don't think you can get it all from a textbook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My library has, I don't know how many leadership and business textbooks, and I just stopped reading them. Like, for that very reason, I get more out of conversation than I do out of sitting, listening, reading somebody's theory that may or may not apply. What's the biggest challenge that you're trying to solve right now?
Right now, the biggest challenge is helping to ramp up a business from basically startup mode. That is the challenge today. But it's also a massive opportunity too. Outside of that, I mean, workforce availability is always a challenge. Trying to find that right skill set, that right balance. As I said, I kind of structure the hiring plan around different personality types mixing together well to create, something that's greater than the sum of its parts. The time and investment needed to do that properly is a challenge. I
Yeah.
mean, interview style, I do not like the, 1 hour standard question interview structure. I don't think you're really getting a lot out of the individual for that. It's very easy to rehearse a company's website, to look at some technical documentation that you can articulate, credible answers within a 1 hour setting. Like style there tends to be is yes, we will do that as an initial conversation, but very quickly, I want to meet someone face to face. I want to give a couple of scenarios, not necessarily with a right or wrong answer, but I want to see how that person's mind operates. I want to see how their critical thinking works. I want to tease out, where the gaps are that they maybe don't even realize, where their strengths are that maybe they're not leaning into enough, and then help to craft the organization around that. That obviously takes a significant amount of time and investment to do, but when it's done right, it sets you up for success.
Yeah, it sure does. Those people that are entering into a leadership role, what's one piece of advice you would give them?
Don't listen to the doubters, trust yourself. If you are confident enough to, number one, take the leap to apply for a leadership role, then there's something there that's driving you. If it's purely for compensation reasons, you shouldn't go into it. If it's something that you see you're going to build yourself, build your career, and then ultimately build a successful team, go for it. And if you get the naysayers out there, which there always will be, if you're confident in yourself, keep pushing.
Yeah, yeah, got it. When you were jumping into a leadership role, what skills did you feel least prepared for?
Ooh, let me think.
Yeah.
Probably around dealing with the different personalities. And the one thing that was a gap there, whether it's a skill or not, but was accounting for the dynamic change for the people that used to be peers now becoming your reports. That's something that no one can teach you. I think you can be told about it, you can be prepared for it, but the impact that that has when people that you've worked very closely with for maybe a number of years, all of a sudden, you're no longer peers, but they're your direct reports.
Say more about that, because that is a very, very common experience in the work that I do. When people make that transition, they go from peer all of a sudden to supervisor. It's a different game. Tell me about how you manage that process, because it's a tough one.
The most critical thing is don't lose yourself in hubris of being a manager. Don't think automatically, okay, I'm now in charge of this organization. You're going to do as I say. I think that is the complete wrong direction to go. You cannot lose who you fundamentally were as a peer. You need to transition that relationship. Obviously, it changes. There does have to be tougher conversations sometimes, but I think as long as you're outlining to the individuals, okay, here's the reason, here's the justification, here's exactly what needs to happen. It's not just a top-down dictate. I think that would be a good piece of advice for anybody making that transition. Is don't assume I've been promoted into a leader role. Now everybody has to listen to me.
Yeah.
Um, that I've seen the good and I've seen the bad.
Yes.
That would probably be the biggest piece of advice I would give. And it's be humble. I mean, even if you're put into a leadership position, doesn't necessarily mean you know more than everyone else that's still your peer. You need them as much as they need you in order
Yeah.
to succeed. If you go in and do that transition and it maybe doesn't go quite as successfully as you want it to go, and then all of a sudden you're finding you're getting a lot of pushback, or you're getting a lot of negative feedback on certain decisions, you got to ask yourself, well, if it was someone else being leader and I was still a peer, would we be having these negative pushbacks? And if so, well, what do I need to pivot in my own approach to make this more comfortable for everybody?
Yeah, one of the things you just mentioned that becomes critical is that switch into internal changes that have to occur for you, right, in order to be successful. Tell me a little bit about what that process was like. You looked in the mirror and said, I got to do something different. This ain't working.
Well, I've been pretty fortunate. I mean, I've had pretty limited negative responses when moving into the leadership role. There was always that early days where people sort of felt uncomfortable with it or whatever, but it hasn't been such a long trail for me to get into that. Um, I think when people reflect on it, when they have to look in the mirror and make those changes, again, don't become someone you're not comfortable being. Don't shoehorn yourself into a leadership position if that's not you. If you don't feel like that is the right fit for your personality, if you're not able to move into that, more authoritative role where you're accountable at the end of the day. If the accountability is not something that sits well, then it's not right. It's not right for you. Keep developing as an individual contributor. Put your effort in that way. Because if you do make that transition and you're not fully on board with it yourself, then you're not only feeling you're feeling the people that are reporting into you.
Yes.
And then that can cause a cascade failure within not just your organization, your own little area that you're in, but it can start to have negative feedback loops across the business. Because if people get unhappy, turnover starts to increase, and it's like a snowball effect.
Yeah. Very, very wise counsel for sure. You mentioned watching podcasts and having great mentorship. Any other avenues that you took to develop your skills?
Probably a big one is actually just some time for self-reflection. I mean, it's very easy to get lost in emails, very easy to get lost in preparing the next presentation for something. If you don't have that time to mentally disengage, go for a walk, take the dogs out, go for a hike, even go for a drive. If you don't have that checkout process, you can get very lost in the weeds very quickly. And it's extremely hard to get yourself back out of that. So don't forget that you're a person as well. And that you have that emotional needs level, you have that baseline needs level. Because you've gone into a leadership role, you cannot step back from yourself.
Important stuff. Any other things that you want to share before we wrap this session up?
I think one thing that I've been reflecting on lately is definitely the leaders that I had in my early career and some of the lessons that I took from them. It's very easy that when you're in your 20s and 30s that you kind of just go, oh yeah, that was good. I'm now moving up in the world. I'm moving up in the organization. But don't forget that you've learned a lot from those people, and the habits that you've picked up, the way you interact with people, the way you see like leadership as a function. Don't ignore what's right in front of you, would be one piece of advice. Look to people that you see as good leaders. Figure out what they're doing right, what maybe they're not doing right, and then learn from it.
What I've found in my work is that people go into leadership roles and they role model good, the bad, the ugly of leaders that they had before. They don't know any different, right? And that creates a real problem for the team, So yeah, excellent advice. Thank you for your wisdom and your expertise, Daniel. I really appreciate it. You've been charged with a great task that I know you're up for, and you'll grow.
The hairline says a bit different, Michael. It's starting to get thin up top.
Look at me. I've been there, done that. Yeah, I really want to thank you for your insights. And, do you get back to Ireland a lot?
Probably not as much as we'd like to. We have gone back for a couple of vacations and family events and things like that. But as a family, we really want to explore the US. It's not a country, it's a continent that we have here. So what we've been kind of prioritizing over the last couple of years is, and we have a young daughter. Our daughter is turning 6 this year. So one thing me and the wife have agreed is that for her birthday every year, we want to go and visit a national park. We've got quite a few of those to tick off the list. We've done a few already, but we don't head back to Ireland all that much. But we're trying to really settle our roots here, build our lives here, explore our new home, and really take it from there with the family life.
Fabulous. Great plan. This is Mike Scarponi. Thanks for your time. And we'll catch you on the next episode of Beyond the Title, moving from individual contributor to leader. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you, Michael. Pleasure.